This is the pre-award 5310 grant training that you must take before submitting your application for the 5310 grant. We're going to go over briefly what the 5310 grant is, but if you are new to the program and you have more questions, please let me know. I do think there's a couple new agencies. Also, if you did not attend the in-person training, you will not get the No, I just ripped that one. You won't get these guidebooks that I printed, and the pre-application walkthrough, but I have put them in the email that I sent to you, so you should have copies if you want to get them printed. I also have extras in my office. If you are a new agency applying for the first time and you do get awarded, you will be required to attend the post-award grant training in person so that you can get actual printed guidebooks. And I think that's it for housekeeping. But yeah, if I go too fast or I don't explain an acronym that you don't recognize or a word that you're unsure of, stop me. Tuesday, we did finish early. I think we finished at like 11:15, 11:20, and we were out of here by 11:30. So hopefully we'll finish early today. We can take a short break around 10, and then we will finish up. Okay, so the FTA Section 5310 grant program is funding for the mobility of seniors and people with disabilities. We fund nonprofits and government agencies, and we will talk about eligibility. What does the 5310 mean? It is a federal grant code, which indicates the formula funding program. There are other grant codes similar to that you might recognize, but usually UTA and UDOT are the recipients of those funds directly. Some of those funds we pass through to the community, and others we use for our internal projects. So 5310 program is actually split in Utah, split between UTA and UDOT. And in your guide at the back, there are all the UZA maps. So if your agency falls within, my camera's blurred. If you're, oh, nope, that's not going to work. If your agency falls within that UZA boundary, then you apply to UTA for your 5310 funds. If you are outside of the UZA, which means large urbanized area boundary, then you need to apply through UDOT's 5310 funding program, and we run them differently. Agencies that are recipients of the funds directly get to decide how to run their grant programs and how to administer those funds. So if you want to understand better how UTA manages those funds and distributes those funds, we are required to have a federally approved program management plan, which can be found on our website. We are currently updating that, and the new one was posted for public comment a couple months ago, and it's now been taken off the website because it's in FTA review. But our old program management plan is still available on our webpage for download if you want to look at that. And when our new one is available, I will let you know and put it on the website. The other formula fund grants you might hear about are 5311, 5307, 5339. So all those numbers indicate just the grant program and which type it is. Today's training, we're going to do an introduction about our grant cycle here at UTA and how we manage the grant, the timeline that we follow for that, the available funding for each of the urbanized areas that we administer, and then we'll talk about eligibility, eligible projects, and eligible agencies, what those project requirements are, and what your local human transportation service plans are and where to find them. Then we will talk about the application. And then probably after break, we'll talk about the award process and briefly go over post-award just so you have some expectations of what kind of reporting is required with this grant before you apply for it. This is what our grant application cycle looks like. We start with our notice of funding, which went out December 15th, and our cycle runs on a 2-year process. So we put out the notice of funding, then we have this pre-award training. Then your pre-application is due in Zoom grants on January 18th. Don't worry, I'll put those dates up in another slide. Then your application. Then we do the scoring and local coordinated council meeting where agencies that are applying can come and present to the GMAT, which we will talk about further. Then you'll get award letters. Then we put all of our awards into FTA as a grant application. So we are apportioned the formula funds. So the government tells us this is how much you're going to have for the year. That's just the apportionment that they tell us. Then we open our grant application to you and you apply to us and we create a program of awards that we decide on. Then that is given to FTA as basically our grant application. So we take all of your applications and awards and we turn it into an application to the FTA. And then the FTA will approve it and reimburse us for paying you. So that's how that process works. But we have to put all that application in and wait for the FTA to approve it before we can send out and sign your grant agreements. After your grant agreements are signed or sometime in between, we will have a post-award training that will go over how to manage your vehicles, your quarterly reports, everything that happens after award, all the way to project closeout and disposal of vehicles. We will talk about that further in the post-award training. If you are a new agency, you also may need one-on-one vehicle training for our Ride Pilot system. Ride Pilot is a free web, I don't know what to call it, web program that we offer as a way to manage vehicles and a way for us to get the reports that you are required to turn in without paper. So back in the day, everyone had to keep records of all their maintenance and have a maintenance plan and give us all of that in an audit and keep a lot of paperwork. So we developed the Ride Pilot program so that you can track your vehicles in it. You can do all your one-way trip reporting, your unique individual reporting, which we'll talk about, and all of your preventive maintenance and accident information can go right into Ride Pilot and we can check it at any time. We run quarterly reports from Ride Pilot to make sure you're managing your vehicles well. And it's much easier for us that way for an FTA audit to show them that we are ensuring and overseeing FTA asset management. So after you have one-on-one Ride Pilot training, then you can pick up your vehicle and then projects are closed out. So that's the brief application cycle. Here are some important dates that you need to remember. January 18th is when the pre-application portal closes. The pre-application is like your letter of intent. You're letting us know what you plan on applying for so we can make sure that your project is eligible. We can make sure that your agency is eligible to receive federal funding. And then once we approve your pre-application, the application portal will be accessible to you. It will open January 26th, or if it's approved earlier, you will get a notification. But all of the approved ones will open January 26th. And if your pre-application was not approved, we will reach out to you to see if you want a debrief meeting to discuss why it wasn't approved and how you could be eligible in the future. The application portal closes March 1st. I highly recommend that you try to get it in as soon as possible though, because that gives us more time to review it and let you know if we see mistakes or if you uploaded the wrong document to the wrong place, or if we can tell that you just didn't understand one of the questions, we can open it to you and, give you a hint, like, please read question 5 again. That way you have a better chance of getting your application correct. We will open those for revisions if needed, but everything has to be back in by March 31st and the portal closes permanently. Anything that was not fixed can't be fixed at that point. So if you get it in earlier to us and we can review it sooner, then you'll just have more time to make any changes if we see any issues with your application. Then we have our in-person local coordinated council meetings in April. And that is a chance for applicants to bring, sorry, I can't see my notes the way that it's put in the screen. Let me see if I can fix that. Nope. Let's make this smaller. Okay. And we'll talk more about that. I'll give you some examples of what that looks like if you've never done it before, and we'll talk about what the GMAT is. Scoring and ranking. So after the application portal is closed, my group reviews and scores all of the applications, and then we come together and compare those scores and find an average and discuss our rankings, and we put them from highest to lowest and most important project to least important project based on your human transportation service plans and what your local coordinated council decided were the main gaps, needs, strategies, and projects in their area, which we will talk about. Then the grant management advisory team will review our ranking and scoring and review our recommendations. And usually we give them some options, and they can come to a conclusion on what awards they want to do. So they get the final say. Now that is only in the North UZA, Ogden-Layton, and Salt Lake City UZA. Provo-Orem, because they are a small group, they have chosen not to have a grant management advisory team, and instead they meet as a group and discuss the awards together. And if ever they decide that that's not working for them anymore and they do want a grant management advisory team, we can discuss that at the local coordinated councils and make that change. But for now, they have elected to do it that way. But because Salt Lake City is bigger and Ogden-Layton has gotten smaller, but it's still a big urbanized area, they have chosen to have an outside volunteer-based group do the final award decisions because they just felt uncomfortable discussing it as a group and having to make those decisions in front of each other, which is understandable, and a lot of other 5310 programs do it that way. The GMAT usually consists of someone from each MPO and some mobility management, what do you call them? Mobility managers throughout the Utah area. We try to get a volunteer from each area that's not applying, and then we usually have some UTA people also on that team that are not involved in the application process and do not do the scoring and ranking. So the GMAT is given a chance to review the applications. They can fill out a form and ask any questions. If we get that form in time, we will send you the questions ahead of time before the April LCC presentation meeting so that you know which questions to address in your presentation. Then once the GMAT has made final decisions, I develop a program of projects, which some of you may have seen before. We will present it to you in the June LCC meeting so that you can see it. And it's basically the order of ranking and what awards are going where. And that is what we give to FTA for their final decision as well. So the GMAT agrees on the program of projects before you see it. You never see application scores. Those are kept private. But the program of projects is in order from highest scoring applications and most important projects, and then it goes down from there. That helps when the GMAT has to make decisions for scaling back projects. After all that, we send out award letters, and then we give our program of projects to FTA and wait for that process. Those have to be into FTA by June 29th. And then we wait for them to review and approve the grant before we can send out grant agreement. And we send out our grant agreements in DocuSign. So in your application, you will see a spreadsheet where you have to fill out who needs to sign in what order and their email addresses for when we send out the DocuSign. But then also required is a letter of approval giving at least one person on that signing list the authority to execute a grant agreement for your agency. If you work for a government agency or you have extra requirements for signing grant agreements, please let us know in that section of your application so that we can get that to you. Like some government agencies need a paper copy first for them to review and put through their board process before we could do the DocuSign part of it. So we will work with you on however your agency requires that to be done. Here are the available funds for 2025. These are the final numbers because full apportionments have been released. Now, the last time I showed this at the LCC meeting, I actually was too low. I was about 50% off because they had only released the partial apportionment. Now they have released the full apportionment for 2025. So these are the final numbers of what is available. And then for 2026, what we typically do is project by about 2% increase. And just as a reminder, for those of you who already know this, UTA takes 10% of the total of each of the apportionments for each area. 10% of that goes to the administrative costs of this program. And then 55% has to be allocated to capital. It can be more than 55%, but it cannot be less than 55%. And then the remaining 35% can go to non-traditional projects or operating costs, and those operating costs and travel training costs. So these are the projected 2026 numbers. So we've increased it by 2%. And we will know the final apportionments later this year before your awards go out. So it might increase a little bit. Usually it does. Usually we estimate a little safer. And usually we get those numbers by March, I want to say. So by the time we're doing our final program of projects, we should have the final apportionments approved by the government. Okay. Any questions yet in the chat? No. Okay, I'm going to continue. We're going to talk about eligibility. Agencies that are eligible for the 5310 funds include, I don't know why it says private nonprofit. That's a little confusing. I should change that to just say nonprofit 501c3 certified organizations, state or local government entities designated to serve seniors and or people with disabilities, and state or local government entities that have proof of certification that no other nonprofit is available to provide service in their area. There is an exception to this eligibility rule, which I have added because we do have partnerships with Yellow Cab and Ute Cab of Utah. They are private taxi companies, but they provide shared ride service and also contract with the state. So they can be a designated subrecipient for only accessible vehicles. So we do provide them accessible vehicles. They also are available to subrecipients for collaboration and third-party projects, which I will talk about more later. Some traditional projects that we fund are vehicles, preventive maintenance for those vehicles, mobility management, which does not mean fleet management. I can send you more information if you want further details on mobility management. It's kind of a niche project. A mobility manager has to do outreach throughout the community. They are a person who's a touchstone contact for different nonprofits who need help finding the right service for clients. They also help with the coordinated human transportation service plans in their area. They work with MPOs. They do a lot of different things, and it's not always just working for one agency and like doing fleet management. That's not what mobility management is. So if you want more information about mobility management, let me know and I can send that to you. We have a question: would communications or scheduling technology platforms be eligible for traditional? They can be. You need to reach out to us prior to your application, and we will talk about that. But we need to make sure that it is approved. You have to have quotes. If your project is going to be greater than $10,000, there are requirements for you to have a procurement plan if you're going to be procuring things yourself, and it has to be federally it has to meet the federal guidelines for procurement. If it's under $10,000, then you don't have to have a procurement plan, but you do have to have quotes. We have to make sure that it meets the federal rules on the Chinese ban of certain technologies. And we also have to make sure that it's directly, uh, sorry, I lost my train of thought, directly supporting your project so that you can serve seniors and people with disabilities. So if you're doing any of these other traditional projects, you need prior approval. You have to submit quotes, and we can talk about that more with you directly because, of course, the answer is always it depends on what it is, how much it is, and all that stuff. Oh, I just changed my screen. Hold on. Why is it so hard to manage all these screens? Okay. I hope that answered your question. So just you can email us with the information and then we'll go from there. Now I can't see the chat. There it is. Okay, so here are the maps I put here, but you can see them better in your guidebook. You have to make sure that your agency address where your SAM.gov registration is falls within the urbanized planning area. Trips provided must have an origin and or destination within that area as well. For agencies who are in multiple UZAs, you can apply for multiple UZAs, but you also have to attend the local coordinated council in all of those areas and be involved in that for, excuse me, to be able to apply for those funds. And you don't need to do a separate application for each UZA. And so if you need help with your application because you're doing multiple UZA, within your application and you need assistance on how to do that, you can reach out to me. Really, the only difference is that your budget is going to be like 3 separate little pots, but your application should just be an overview for all 3 areas so that you can fit within the character limits. So I can help you with that. Other requirements are coordination, which I just briefly mentioned. You have to be involved in the local coordinated council. And I recommend if it's your first application and you don't get awarded, keep coming to the local coordinated councils, get involved. You can do a lot of coordination projects. I see a lot where, a new organization will come in and apply that has never attended the local coordinated council meetings before. And they might not get funded because the GMAT feels that they're too high risk, and then they never come back to the local coordinated council meetings. That's disappointing to me because I think that we want you involved and we want to get to know your agencies, but you have to be part of the community and part of that council so that the other agencies get to know your agency and understand why your services are important, and then they will want to fund your projects because this isn't just UTA deciding who gets the money. This is based on the local coordinating council and what they think is priority in their area and what will help meet the gaps that they have identified in their area. So this really is coming from the community and all decisions are made together as a group. So it's really important to be involved. If you do get awarded, you do need to attend all of the local coordinated council meetings and be involved, especially because when changes come down to us from FTA, that is the main way that we let you know about those changes. Local match required for different projects depends if it's traditional or non-traditional. And in your guidebook, it is explained further, but you need to know that for when you do your budget, which we will talk about. If you are applying for operating costs, then you need to bring 50% match. And then any other projects are usually capital projects, and that requires a 20% match. What I mean by operating costs is anything that directly supports your program for administering rides to seniors and people with disabilities. Examples of that are driver wages, fuel, recurring registration costs, vehicle insurance, things like that. Preventive maintenance is covered at 80/20. However, it's more limited. So things like oil changes, tire rotations, I can't think of anything else right now. Those things are preventive maintenance. Oh, car wash. Car wash counts as preventive maintenance because it helps keep your federal asset in a good working condition. Mobility management is also a capital project. Vehicles are capital. So you need to understand that before you put in your application, so you make sure you do your budget right. But if we see that it's wrong, we will let you know. Do I have... Also, somewhere in your guidebook, it will say where to find the cost principles from FTA. There is the 2 CFR 200 Part E cost principles. Kind of sad that I have that memorized, but that is where you can find the full list of everything that you can purchase with federal funds and all of the rules. So if you need some reading, you can find that. If you charge a fare for your transportation services, any revenue from those fares must be subtracted from your total operations costs. And I'll show you what the budget form looks like, and we'll talk about that more. In-kind match can be accepted, but it must be pre-approved, and you must have adequate documentation to support the use of in-kind contribution. And if you need to understand in-kind more, you can also find those rules in the 2 CFR 200, or you can contact me. It can be pretty confusing using in-kind match. But you do need to provide your match source and include a letter of commitment showing that you have that match ready before you apply for funds. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the application. And then probably after this section, we can take a break. I'm going to talk about the application process, how to use the application guide. That's the, not the book, but the 5310 grants, how to submit a pre-application updated 2026. This will walk you through Zoom grants. And so you could print it out and have it next to you while you're going through the application and filling it out. And this will walk you through each screen and each question. And I also made one for the full application, but I will send that out closer to time of the application being due so that I can include the scoring rubric as well to help you filling out that application. What else? Oh, and then I'll go over some tips that I have on grant writing just to help you. The pre-application is due January 18th. You complete it in Zoom grants. It screens for eligibility, which we already talked about. Please be as clear as possible about what you're asking for. So for example, if you were to put communications technology into your application, we need more information, right? That's why we ask you to reach out to us so we can tell you what information we need. We have to have quotes. We need to know what type of technology you're purchasing, what the brand name is, so that our procurement specialist can check that it's not on the banned list of the federal cannot purchase. I don't know, there's a list somewhere. And we need to understand fully what your project is about so we can make sure it's eligible. You have to include your vehicle type and whether it's replacement or expansion. Replacement vehicles, if you are applying for a replacement vehicle, you have to give us a lot of information about the vehicle you are replacing. So I do recommend if you're not replacing a non-federal vehicle, just apply for expansion. Because even if you're replacing a non-federal vehicle, you have to give us all the information on that vehicle. And it's just a lot of information. So, you know, think about that before you decide which one to apply for. If you apply for a replacement vehicle, you have to give us the information on the vehicle you are replacing in the table tab in Zoom Grants. And I think we can look at that together. And you must identify your match source, like I said, and include a letter of commitment for your match source. Your full application's due March 1st. You must also complete that in Zoom Grants. And again, the sooner you submit, the longer you will have to make corrections. Full scored application, more documents. Oh yeah, more documents are required. This is the one that's scored. Pre-application is not scored. And also there's a section in the application we'll go over that has to directly relate to your local coordinated council human transportation service plan. And I will show you where to find those. You'll see this in the slides that I sent you. You could use this, but this is just taken from the Zoom Grants University. So Zoom Grants does have a good website if you need to learn more about Zoom Grants. Their Zoom Grants University is like their help center, and they've got guides like this. So this is just showing you how to create a new Zoom Grants account. Please make sure that your agency does not already have a Zoom Grants account because you can only create one account per UEI number. Because Zoom Grants verifies your UEI number with SAM.gov to make sure that you're eligible to apply for federal funds. So if your agency already has an account connected to their UEI number and you start a new account, it can cause some problems. If you're not sure, you can definitely reach out to Zoom Grants. Their email is questions@zoomgrants.com, and you can just ask them, does my agency have a registration? And they can let you know who your application contact is for that agency. If you need to change your application contact person, you also need to reach out to Zoom Grants. You can CC me on an email to them and I can approve the change if I know your agency and I know the person that you're changing it to. Otherwise, you have to call them and I think you have to provide proof of your identity or something like that. Okay, and then to add the pre-application to your open programs, I recommend, I walk you through this in my guide, but I recommend logging into your Zoom Grants first, then going to our website, which I'll show you here. Got a lot of tabs up. Hold on. There it is. So you navigate to our website. You can also just, this is the long one, but if you just do /5310 grant, well, if you can spell grants, it will take you there. Also, if you do rideuta.com/CMM, it will take you to our coordinated mobility page, which you can find our donated vehicle program, community resources, technology solutions, local coordinated council information, and the 5310 grant program page. Right here is where you can find all of our resources and templates and examples. And some of these documents are required for your application, so you can find them here. And then I still need to update those links with the documents that I sent you. You can use this to jump to the different sections. So I'm going to show you how to add the pre-application. So we're going to jump to pre-application. And right here is the link to the pre-application. So log into Zoom Grants first, click this link, and then it will add it to your open programs list. And then you can get back to it from your homepage after that. You can also add collaborators to that application so that they can log in and make edits as well, and it will show in their open programs. Only your application contact person can submit applications and add collaborators. So if you are not the application contact person, you need them to give you access before you can edit the application, okay? And only they can submit the final application, which my guide also covers. Okay, the pre-application sections that are required are your entity type, so we can make sure you're an eligible agency, a short description of agency mission and transportation services provided. That has a very limited character count because we don't need the whole story of your agency. We just want to know maybe one sentence of what your mission is, and then what type of services you provide. You know, is it, are you a senior living place? Do you just provide day trips for people with disabilities? Are you a taxi company? It doesn't have to be long. And then what populations you serve and what UZA you work in and will apply for. What congressional districts you serve, your project type, the vehicle types that you're applying for, and the amount that you plan on applying for. That can be an estimate, but it just helps us have an idea and helps trigger, a flag if we have to give you rules, like if you're applying for something greater than $10,000 that you want to procure, for example. The documents that are required in the pre-application are, if you're a government agency, you have to show that you are a designated agency or that you're not competing with nonprofits in your area for the same type of service. Your SAM registration. I do have screenshots in the guide about the SAM registration and how to download it. They have updated the sam.gov website, and I have to say it is so much better than it used to be. I'm really excited about it. Now, when you search your agency, there is a little button at the top where you can just download proof of your SAM registration and upload it to our application. So I added in the guide how to do that. Yes, John. So you no longer have to you used to have to take a screenshot and then save it and upload it, and it didn't have all the information. Now you can just download a PDF directly from sam.gov that gives us all the information that we need. And I show that in this pre-application guide. There's a section when you get to document uploads, and I show you how to download that from SAM. We like the new SAMs, much better. Nonprofit determination letter from the IRS, or if you're a government agency, we just need something that has your federal TIN number on it. Your current W-9, and if you are applying for non-accessible vehicles, there is a template you can download from the application, pre-application, in the documents section of that you need to fill out and then upload for certificate of equivalent service and assessment. Excuse me. Because if you are applying for a non-accessible vehicle, we have to check that you have enough accessible vehicles already to provide the service that you need before we can give you a non-accessible vehicle. Okay, we're going to move into something difficult. So pay attention and get out your pens. We're going to talk about the budget, and I'm going to actually skip forward to the timeline first, and then we'll go back and look at the budget worksheet together. This seems to be the section of the application where people get the most confused and struggle the most. So I have decided this year to not change the budget sheet because I want you to get used to it before I try to create like a fancier one. So it's just going to be the Word document that we had last time that you fill out. And we're just going to use that again and see how it goes. I need to say, what's the best way to say this? We used to try to explain the difference between federal fiscal year and annual year, and we did your quarterly reports on the annual year, but then you had to calculate your numbers on the federal fiscal year, and it got very confusing. So when you're talking and thinking about 5310, anything that we tell you, anything we ask for, reports, invoices, annual year no longer exists. We are thinking as the federal government, this is how they see the federal fiscal year. This is the year that they work off of when they're apportioning funds. So, annual year does not exist. This is the year that we're working from. The federal government thinks of a year as October to September. So, all of our reports, all of our period of performance end dates work off of this timeline. So the federal fiscal year of 2025, which is the apportionment right now that we are awarding, and we have the full apportionments for, is October 2024 to September of 2025. Then these are the quarters of that year. So when you're doing your invoices, this is your period of performance for 2025. So when you are submitting for reimbursement for things such as operating costs, we are talking about the things that you spent in these quarters already. So you will bill, once you're awarded, you will bill us for activities that happened in this federal fiscal year, and you will combine them into 4 invoices, one for each of these quarters. If you are an agency that has a lot of operations and you have to do it monthly, we can talk about that, but it is much easier for our accounting processes if you keep the invoices to 1 quarter each. And typically we can include a lot of pages in that. And if you can't upload them to Zoom grants, you can email them to us or something like that. But it saves us a lot of time and headache if we can keep them to 1 invoice per quarter, and you can break out like operating, preventive maintenance, and mobility management all in 1 invoice. And we can help you do that. That's more post-award stuff, but I just want you to understand the federal fiscal year so that you can budget correctly. So when we're talking about our budget form, year 1 on the budget form are the expenses you already have that happened within that federal fiscal year, 2025, October 2024 to September 2025. That's already happened. You should already know exactly how much you spent in operating in that year. Anything you didn't already get reimbursed for, and you can apply for that amount for operating. Then the general rule is to add 1 to 2% to that and estimate for year 2. Or you can keep it the exact same number that you spent in year 1, 2025. That's fine. But that is how you do the budget form. If you are only applying for funds in 2026, then you leave year 1 blank and you only fill out 2026. Okay. And then some people, I know there are agencies that also leave off a little bit, or they typically have expenses that go beyond what they estimated because they have been with us for a long time and they know that sometimes we'll have remaining funds that we need to allocate near the end of the grant. So you could do that also if you estimate, let's say 65,000 for your year. Obviously, this is not a good example because I didn't show the federal local. The total should be the federal plus the local. Why did I do that? This is a bad example. Sorry. Ignore the numbers that are on here. Okay, this is just an example. Let's say we estimate 65,000 for year 2. So I go through my 2026 year, let's say, and I actually had like 80,000 in operating. keep those receipts, put them in a folder, keep track of them. And then near the end of the grant, if we have remaining funds that either weren't spent or a vehicle came in under, and we can give out more towards operating without going over that 35% that I talked about that we are required to stay under for operating, then we can award you that and cover those invoices, but you have to submit them very quickly and you have to have them ready. So anything that you get that's over that budgeted amount, I would just save in a folder somewhere that you can access quickly. That helps us close grants in a timely manner, and you might get your agreement amended and get extra funds. What else do I need to talk about with budgeting? Remember to subtract any reimbursements from older funds that you may have already received, because sometimes when we're desperate to like spend funds, we'll go outside of that period of performance and maybe reimburse, something that happened in 2025 with 2024 funds. We don't like doing that, but sometimes we have to get money spent. So if that happens, make sure you're checking with your grant manager or whoever, if your finance person and your grant manager aren't speaking and one person fills out the budget form but doesn't check with the person that did the invoices, you're not going to get the right number. So make sure that you're subtracting any invoices that were already paid with past funds. Make sure you're subtracting revenue brought in by fairs. When I say fairs, I don't mean donations. If you get donations for trips, you don't have to claim that as revenue against your operating expenses. But if you charge fares, you do have to remove the fare revenue that you make from your operating expenses. Okay. Did I cover everything? Let's see. Yes, yes. Make sure in the budget narrative, you justify what you're asking for. So this example, I put, we need a full-time driver to oversee the transportation program and care for the 5310 vehicles. They will ensure the trips and unique riders are reported in Ride Pilot. They'll complete the daily pre and post trip inspections. They'll ensure the vehicle is receiving scheduled maintenance. They will drive 7 days a week, because for this example, I put that the driver is full-time. So the FTE is 1. You can Google that if you need. I estimated 125 for fringe. That's how we do it at UTA. Your agency might calculate fringe differently, so be sure to put that on there if you're getting fringe reimbursed. But yeah, justify each section. What else? At the budget of the, oh yeah, the bottom of the budget form had some confusion. If you are still struggling with the budget form, just so you know, we also have a whole Lunch and Learn recorded on our YouTube that was just about the budget that we did last year. So let me think. This is our YouTube channel, Coordinated Mobility Utah 5310 Urban, or just at Coordinated Mobility 5310. You can subscribe to get alerts. We put our virtual LCC meeting recordings here now, and we have a lot of Lunch and Learns and trainings. This one here, the 5310 Budget Milestones Lunch and Learn, that one goes deep dive into the budget, and a lot of people said it was helpful. So if you're still confused about the budget form, that is a really good resource. And also, if you ever have new employees, the YouTube channel is really good to get them caught up. You can watch our post-award trainings from previous years, and this training will also be uploaded to that YouTube channel. Okay. Then once you fill out that budget form, remember that's like an external document. It's just like a Word document. You can turn it into a PDF if you want, but we kept it as a Word document because people were struggling with it. So fill it out best you can. I will reach out to you if it's wrong and we can work on it together. Or you can watch that video. The video helps a lot. but you still have to fill out the budget section in Zoom Grants as well. It will look something like this, and the guide also walks you through that. The top part will be the local match that you have to put in, and then down below it will look like this, where it has all the funding uses and expenses. These item descriptions are editable, so you can remove these if you're not applying, if you want to clean it up, or you can just add other projects to the bottom if you need to. It's fully editable. Your total project cost is 100%. Actually, I switched these to make it easier. It's going to be federal first, then local, then total. I just changed that yesterday. Sorry. So it's going to be the federal amount first. So either 80%. John, this is the full application. Yes. We're done talking about the pre-application, and now we're on to the full application. So this is in your full application. The pre-application just asks for estimates, but the full application you have to put in your full budget that you are applying for. So you'll put the federal amount, the local amount, and the total project cost. If it's operating, it will be 50% federal, 50% local, total is 100%. If it's a vehicle, it's 80% federal, 20% local match. In the application questions and in the book, we have our estimates for vehicle prices that you will use as a guide for your budget. They haven't changed much from last time, which is good because, as everyone knows, we took a huge jump up in vehicle costs in 2020, and now they've kind of stopped increasing as crazy. So I think we're going to keep the estimates pretty much the same, and then you'll use that estimated cost for filling this out. If you are doing something like a non-accessible sedan or SUV, we can't always get you exactly the same model that you request, but we will try to get something similar to it because we have to order that from a state contract. So whatever the state has negotiated for the year with a certain vendor, such as like Toyota or Ford or whoever they have the contract with for a certain number of vehicles for that year, we look and then we'll try to get you whatever they have on the lot that is closest to what you need. So please give us as much description as you can if you're applying for a non-accessible vehicle, such as I need something that's all-wheel drive. I need something that's electric. I'm looking for a hybrid. I'm looking for, anything specific that you have. Please include that so that we know what kind of vehicle to look for and what kind of price range that would be. You can just Google the price and put that on your application. What else? If you have any strange requirements for accessible vehicles, you can tell us too. But again, the accessible vehicles come pretty standard. We negotiate a contract with a vendor, and then that's the only kind that we get. So, for example, the expansion accessible transit van is going to be a Ford Transit van with a lift. If you have any special requirements, like it has to be diesel or it has to, be able to pull a trailer, I don't know. Let us know in your application so we can make sure that that's something we can get before we award it. The accessible cutaway buses that we do are small and do not require CDL. That is the largest vehicle that we do. Yeah, if you have any other questions about vehicle types or models, just email me. Are there any questions about federal fiscal year or the budget that I can answer before we move on? Because I do know it's a confusing topic. I don't know if I can see hands. I don't see anything in the chat. I don't think I see any hands. Okay. This is the federal fiscal year for 2026. It looks a lot like the federal fiscal year for 2025, October to September. So by the time you sign your grant agreement and you're ready to submit invoices, you should already have all eight quarters invoices ready to go that you can submit, okay? So once that grant agreement is executed, okay, so let me go back. This is September 2026, just for the visual, right? We did October 2024. We went through, that year ended. October 2025 through to September 26. Then from September 2026 to June 2027. That's 9 months, I think. That's a long time that we're giving you to get your invoices into us, and we have to get them paid by that date. I'm not talking about vehicles right now. This is just operating, preventive maintenance, mobility management, anything that's a reimbursable cost. Our grants are based on reimbursable costs for these types of projects. So you already have to have the receipts and the invoices to submit to us to get reimbursement. The FTA is not very understanding when it comes to giving time for you to get us those invoices. They think that I'm giving you too much time because I'm giving you these 9 months. But I want to make sure that you have enough time to get them all in, and then we have time to reaward any remaining funds that were not spent. So this is our current, they could make me change it, but currently this is the buffer period that I give you from the time your grant agreement is signed, sometime in here. It could be September, although as late as December, honestly, just depends on when FTA approves. So let me make sure I explained the FTA part. So June 29th of 2026 is when I have to have everything into the FTA. They can take as long as they want to review it. I'm hoping it's faster this year. Last time was really bad. It took a really long time. So I'm really hopeful that we can get it approved sooner this year. It seems like they have now combined efforts now that the FTA is short-staffed, and they are just all reviewing applications at once instead of it having to go to a specific person within my region. So hopefully it's faster. Once that's approved, we get your grant agreement to you, and depending on how long it takes to get all signatures, then once your grant agreement is fully executed, you can submit those invoices to us. So that could be in September, October, November. But you have to get us all your invoices by June 30th, 2027. If we don't have your invoice by June 30th, 2027, we're going to start looking to other agencies that have that little folder I talked about that has their extra expenses ready to go, and we will give them the funds, and they will get to spend that money and get their agreement amended, because we have to spend that money before the end of 2027, even if the FTA gives us an extension for vehicles. So that's why I'm saying I'm not talking about vehicles right now, because the FTA is a lot more lenient when it comes to vehicle purchases, because we don't control how long it takes for a vehicle to be manufactured. We don't have control over when that vehicle gets delivered. So we can apply for extensions when we need to wait for the vehicles to come in, but they do not want to grant us extensions for things like operating, because they don't understand why you haven't turned in those invoices. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And of course, we'll go over that again in the post-award training. Okay. How close are we to the end? Should we take a break? Let me see. Let's just keep going through this section and then we'll take a break. Vehicle estimates. These are the vehicle estimates I talked about. They haven't changed much from last time, and they will be in your guidebook, or if you need the table, I mean, it's in the slides as well. Vehicle costs are based on estimates because we avoid you paying overmatch, so we overestimate the cost. So we typically have leftover costs that we have to reaward. Fleet inventory. Let's talk about this for a minute. This is not in Zoom Grants as a table. This is a form that you download externally, and your agency needs to keep that updated at all times in case of a federal audit. It has to have your full fleet, not just your federal vehicles, but your federal vehicles are the only ones that have to have every single column filled out. But it should contain your full fleet. Your agency should have a policy for keeping this updated. If you don't have a fleet, you do not have to fill this out. This is just for agencies who run a vehicle fleet and have federal assets that they're required to track. Even if it's a non-5310 vehicle, it needs to be on here, but it doesn't have to have the grant number, the condition rating, the federal percentage. Condition rating will be in your post-award guide, so you don't need to worry about that yet. But your agency should have either its own condition rating in your policies or just follow the condition rating that UTA and the FTA use, which we have examples of in the post-award manual. Useful life, we'll talk about federal useful life really quick. All the assets that we award have a federal useful life. You are required to maintain that federal asset in good working condition until the useful life is met. You are required to report in Ride Pilot everything that goes on with that vehicle until that useful life is met. Most of our vehicles have a useful life of 5 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first. We do not give you the title once the useful life is met. We hold on to the title so that when it comes time for you to dispose of that vehicle, you have to notify us before you sell it, because we have to work with the FTA on disposal of the vehicle. And we will talk more about disposal in the post-award training. But I just want you to be aware of that before you ask for a federal asset, what that looks like. The tables in the application look like this. You will have a staffing table that relates to your staffing plan section of your application that you will have to fill out. You do not need to put all of your employees, okay? These are just people we need to know about. Maybe it's your fleet manager, your grant manager, whoever's doing quarterly reports, whoever's doing invoices, people like that. We don't need all your drivers. We just need the people that we need to know to contact if we need. I think I fixed these boxes. I know they look weird in this screenshot, but you'll need their name, title, phone number, email, and a short description of their responsibilities so that we know who to contact in case we need something. Please update that. I know people have a lot of turnover and sometimes they forget to update that, or they'll email us and say, hey, this person left our agency. We're not going to remember that in our email. We have, 30 plus agencies to keep track of. So please keep your staffing plan in your most current application year in Zoom grants up to date. Your board roster. This is a new one that I added this year. People used to, back in the day, put all of their board member information on their website. And for good reason, people no longer do that because of scams and things like that. So because of that, it makes it harder for us to show the FTA that we are checking if board members have been barred or blocked, can't think of the term, from receiving federal funds or working with federal funds. So I added this table for your board roster. If you're a nonprofit, please put your board members' names, a title if they have one, and then their email. This also allows them to get a copy of risk assessment annually, which we have to show we're, making available to agencies, boards, and then, that we're checking the board members in sam.gov for risk, or in the news if they are in the news for something, So that's just part of our risk assessment. And then there is another table for replacement vehicle that I talked about. You do not need to fill that out unless you are requesting a replacement vehicle. Risk assessments. Risk assessments are required for all applicants. If you had a site visit this year, you already have your 2025 risk assessment, probably. If you do not have your 2025 risk assessment yet, me and Jerry are still working on those, and you will get a copy before your application is due so that you can upload that. If this is your first time applying for 5310 funds, there will be a self-risk assessment form in the application that you can download and fill out, and then we will use that to help us do a full risk assessment on your agency. And also, if you are a first-time applicant, you will automatically be considered a high-risk agency. So in the application, when it asks you for your risk rating, you will select high risk. That is just because it's a flag that it's your first time applying for the funds. That doesn't mean that you will remain high risk, because we do a risk assessment annually. So if you're a high risk in 2026 and then in 2027, we can lower you based on the assessment. So it's not like it's a permanent thing. We do it annually, but that's just one of the flags that triggers the high risk. And there are other factors that can trigger high risk automatically as well. And that's in the risk assessment. We have a new risk assessment that we developed in 2025 with our contractor that scores each question and gives a score, and then also flags certain things as high risk. So it's much better than how we used to do it. So if you need to see that, I will make sure the new one is on the website, and you will all each get a copy of the new one from 2025 with your risk rating before applications are due. To think about risk and oversight of agencies, I like to explain it as your annual risk assessment is like your annual checkup with your doctor. We do an annual checkup with you every year, no matter what, and we update your score. That is a federal requirement that we have to do. Then a desk review is like a virtual check-in. If you are a low-risk agency and you remain low risk, you will not require as many site visits. So we might start alternating a desk review and then 2 years later, a site visit. So that's like a virtual check-in with your doctor. A site visit is more like a specialized visit. It's in person. We look at everything. We have to do a deep dive. We need a lot of documents. And then we come to your agency and we sit down with you and we ask you questions. If you are a medium risk, you require a site visit every 2 years. If you are a high risk, you require a site visit every year until that risk is lowered. What else? Vehicle inspections. Obviously, we'll talk about that more in post-award, but we also inspect your vehicles every 2 years. And then we also do like a FTA inventory that UTA has to do. That's separate from it's separate from vehicle inspections. We don't come and inspect the vehicle. We just have to make sure that you still have it, and we have to come take a picture of the VIN number, but that's separate. We'll talk about that more in post-award. Moving on to application documents. These are the required documents for your application. Everyone has to have their matching funds letter, who's authorized to sign grant agreements for their agency, your most recent financial audit or financial report if you don't meet the threshold for a single audit requirement, your EEO statement and Title VI notices that need to be either on your website or in vehicles, depending on if you run a fleet or not, your Title VI plan. Also, all of these can be found in our resources page if you need examples or templates. The one I showed you on the website. Your most recent risk assessment or your self-risk assessment if you are a new applicant, your budget form that we showed that you download and fill out and then upload to the application, also template in the application. The spreadsheet I talked about to put the order of who needs to sign and their emails so that we can send that easily in DocuSign. Then there are some documents that only agencies with fleet are required to upload. That includes your ADA sorry, I always say it wrong. Your ADA demand response plan because most of you, there's only like one agency, I think, that does this. Most of you are demand response. That's what they call the type of service you provide, which means you have to call a number and get scheduled. I go more into that, I think, in my postal word, but fixed route is more for public entities like UTA. We have a fixed route ADA plan, but your agencies are different. You need a demand response ADA plan, which National RTAP has given us templates to help you with designing that. Or if you already have an ADA plan, you can submit that. It just has to have the same, it has to be the same things that the template has. And it has to contain like your LEP 4-factor analysis. We go much more into that in postal word training. You need a driver training program if you're running a fleet to show us that you meet our requirements for driver training. And you need your driver and employee policies that cover anything from texting and driving to managing federal assets. Whatever policies you have, we do a more deep dive on your policies when we do a site visit. But whatever policies you already have in place that show that you have good policies, you can upload those to the application just to show that you're an organized agency. You already have all those policies. It just looks good. Stuff that's optional is your direct deposit form that I have on there that you can fill out if you want to receive reimbursements by direct deposit. Sustainability plan, that's optional. If your agency has a sustainability plan that you want to include, it just helps the GMAT see that you're a lower risk and you have thought about sustainability, especially after COVID. A lot of agencies developed sustainability plans to show diversification of funds and how they would change service if something happened. It's called FFATA, but it's also called the FSRS checklist. It's something that we have to report about agencies to the federal government on the sam.gov website. And it's any agencies that receive over 30K in a grant agreement. So if your application is over $30,000, you need to fill that out. There are certain sections in the checklist you don't have to fill out unless your agency receives like over $1 million in federal grant money. Actually, I'm going to write that down because I need to check that my form is up to date. Because it used to be 750,000 and they increased it to 1 million. Okay. And then third-party contracts. If you are applying for a third-party contract, you don't have to already have a signed contract, but you need to upload, how your RFP process is going to go, what your contract is going to look like, so we can look at the federal policies and make sure it meets the requirements. Policies or plans that support your project, anything you want to include, and letters of support. We don't require letters of support, but they strengthen your application, so feel free to upload them if you wish. Here is a guide on application submittal. Remember, you have to be the application contact to submit. I show screenshots also in the guide that I gave you, but please, as a reminder, make sure that you see this little green check mark down on the number 2 that says submitted. It has the date, it has the time. If that doesn't appear, you need to refresh and try submitting again until you see that. A lot of people will call me and say, we submitted it, but I can't see it in the system because you didn't get that little green check mark, okay? So make sure you have that. If you don't see the Submit Now button, you are probably not your agency's application contact. So you can navigate back to your summary tab. So on the B screen down at the bottom, there's a tab that says Summary. If you click there, you see your agency's homepage, basically, that has your address and who your application contact is. And that's where you can add different access for people. So it should be on there if you need to find who your application contact is. Some tips on writing your application. Plan and organize. If you have past application, use that to help you. Also, you can always ask for a debrief after your award if you want notes on how your application was viewed and how you can improve it next time. And then you could save that in a folder and then, open that debrief, see how it went, and make sure you add those changes to your current application. Be concise, be specific, follow the directions in the application guide. Make sure your outcomes and goals are measurable. We're going to talk about goals more. And plan your budget. Let's take a break right now before we get into goals. I'm going to say be back at 10:26. So we'll take a quick 10-minute break, go to the bathroom, stretch, get a drink, and then I will start again at 10:26 and we will talk about goals because I don't think we're going to get to the end of this section. I want to make sure I cover goals pretty well. Okay. All right. See you in 10 minutes. Okay, we're gonna start. Hopefully everyone is back. And we're going to jump back into talking about the application, the full application, and writing goals and milestones. Also a tip, once I send you the application walkthrough, you can also look at the scoring rubric to see how we score certain questions, and that will help you in writing the questions to see what we look at. Also, sorry, one more tip on, I used to help UTA do grant development. So one of the things that I learned is if your agency has a lot of silo, so, maybe you have your financial guy is in a separate building than your grant manager and they never talk. It makes it hard to communicate on grant applications and get everything organized. So something that I used to do was take all of the questions on the application, which you could just probably copy or print a PDF from Zoom Grants directly, and then put it in like a Google form or a Microsoft Word shareable form, and then assign different sections to different people, have them put their answer, and then you can take what they wrote and organize it to fit the character limit of each question. That's the easiest way that I got it. John says, don't forget about AI to help. Sure, but read it. Right. I heard something the other day that said, think of ChatGPT as an overenthusiastic intern that is surprisingly stupid sometimes. So make sure you read what they write, but proof it. Yes, always proof it. But yeah, it can help. It can definitely help if you give it the question and your answer, and you could ask it, did I meet the question? Did I answer the question correctly? I like to use it for that, to just make sure I didn't miss anything important in that question that it was asking, or that I misunderstood the question. That can be helpful. Grammarly. I don't use Grammarly a lot, but I've heard that that's a good tool also. And just don't repeat too much. Every year I feel, or every application cycle, I feel like I minimize the character limits even more because people just love to copy and paste their entire history page from their website. I don't need to know what your agency has been doing for the last 30 years. I just need to know what you're applying for and what transportation services you provide. So don't repeat too much. Keep it concise. Make sure you're answering the question that's being asked in that section and not just copying and pasting your mission into every answer. Okay. Any other tips? I think that's it. Okay, we're going to talk about goals for a minute. Now, your goals and milestones are important because we put them into your grant agreement. So don't have any goals like reduce, I don't know, cure world hunger by 2027. You can put goals that you've already met. If you already met them in 2025, that's totally fine. And then we will also add milestones to your agreement that are our federal milestones that we have to meet. So things like the June 30th deadline of getting your invoices in. If you have operations, that will be in your grant agreement. The period and performance dates of when you have to have your activities will be in your grant agreement. So those dates will already be there. And then you can make goals and milestones also that will be in your application that we will add to your project work plan. And I'm going to show you what the grant agreement looks like, and we will talk about the project work plan. This pen died. Can never get a working pen. Okay. Make sure your goals are SMART. That means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. An example, support and expand safe and reliable transportation for disabled adults. That is a very broad goal and it's not measurable. How can you show us that you met that goal if there's no specific anything to measure it against, right? There's no numbers, there's no dates. So an example of turning that goal into something that's a SMART goal is expand transportation services by adding 2 new routes by 2027. Expand transportation services by adding 20 new clients in 2026. And it can be something you already achieved. That's totally fine. Then in your quarterly reports, you could say, we did it. We achieved adding 20 new clients in 2026. You have to do quarterly reports once you are awarded funds. I guess that's in the next section, so I won't talk about that too much. But these types of goals and milestones help you fill out your quarterly report to show us how your project is coming along and that you are meeting your goals. Another one I wrote here, support safe and reliable transportation services by replacing an older vehicle that has met or surpassed its useful life with a new accessible vehicle. That's a good one. Okay. You need to write one goal for each of your project types. So if you're getting 3 accessible vans, you don't need a goal for each van. I just mean you need a goal for vehicles. Okay. So my goal for my vehicle might be expand transportation services by adding 2 new routes with those 2 vans that I'm requesting. So if I'm requesting 2 vans and some operating assistance in this example, I should have 2 goals, one for vans and one for operating assistance, and then they should have different milestones. Each goal should have around 3 milestones if you can fit it. If you have too many projects and you can't fit all the goals and milestones, just be as broad as possible. Maybe reduce the milestones, but have more goals. Try to fit it, but if it doesn't fit, figure it out. We will copy and paste it into your scope of work. Milestone to support this goal is to hire and train new drivers by September 2025. Maybe you've already done that because it's 2026. So that'd be a good milestone for me to include. So my first quarterly report, I can say, I already hit that milestone and we hired and trained 2 new drivers and we're ready to go for when we get those vans. Replace one of our older vans with a newer van by December 2026. Maybe that's a little, that's probably not going to happen right now, right? So make sure they're realistic. I can tell you if it's not realistic. We're probably not going to get a van by then. Maybe we'll order it by then. You'll probably get it end of summer 2027. That's probably more realistic. Milestone 3, after we receive the vehicle, upload the vehicle invoice. That's an easy milestone because it's required once I get my vehicle. So those are just some examples. Another goal, operating assistance to expand transportation services by adding 2 new drivers. My milestone to support that goal is to hire and train 2 new drivers, submit all my reimbursement invoices by June, and complete the project and close it out by September. Okay, so here I gave an example of a milestone for 2025 and then the milestones for 2026. I broke it out. You could do it that way. We will not have our expansion vehicle by 2025, so we don't have milestones for 2025. If you don't have space to put that, don't put that in there. 2026 goals, sign grant agreement, receive the vehicle, place it into service. These are just examples of milestones you could have. Increase clients by 30 riders. Now this one has a later date. So I put a note. Notice that the date is past the period and performance date for operating because capital is different and can have milestones farther out if needed. And that's kind of what I talked about. Like you have to spend all your reimbursable funds by June 2027. But if we had a hard time getting a certain vehicle or the vendor told us that they they won't have it till September of 2027, that's okay. We have buffer time with the FTA for things like getting vehicles. We work that into our application to them, into our own milestones and our own goals that we give to FTA. We work in the time that we need to obtain and deliver vehicles. But with operating, that period is shorter, okay? I'm repeating myself a lot, sorry. Writing to avoid first person. Okay, this is important again for your scope of work. When we copy things over like your staffing plan, your implementation plan, your goals, and all of that, and we put it into your grant agreement, which I will show you kind of what that looks like. It's easier for us if you already have the proper language so that we don't need to edit it. And I'll explain why that's important. If I'm filling out my staffing plan and I put our assistant Lucy will help us put trips into RidePilot. Let's say you sign your grant agreement and then a few months later, Lucy leaves your agency. Well, now that's in your grant agreement and it's not true. That's not a huge problem, but it just doesn't fit the language of a grant agreement properly. So typically what I have to do is edit that language myself when I'm putting it into your grant agreement to make sure that it reads correctly and fits the required terminology of a grant agreement. So it's helpful for me and saves me time if you structure your application, avoiding terms like I, we, our, us, or specific names. So instead of that, you could say the fleet assistant, so I'm using her title instead of her name, will put the program's trips into RidePilot. So that's just cleaner language and helps us a lot when we are drafting your grant agreement. And let's take a moment. Oops. Since we're on the topic, I'm going to show you where to find the copy of our grant agreement so that you can look at it if you want. On our webpage, I'll show you the jump to right here, example grant agreement terms and conditions. If I click that, it will jump to that section and it's right above the contact information. A downloadable sample of our grant agreement. Grant agreements are not contracts. They cannot be negotiated. It is a standard agreement that's updated with the federal clauses that are required currently. The cover sheet will look like this, and it has your grant numbers, your UEI number. It will have your incurred cost periods, that federal fiscal year that I showed you, all the important dates, period of performance for vehicle dates, all that on the cover page. And then it goes into all the terms of participation, all the legal stuff, the requirements for insurance, all of the things on disposition, super fun topics, federal clauses. We're going to pass all that. If you want your lawyer to read it, go ahead. Exhibit A, scope of work. This is what I'm talking about. This is the part that I draft and put personalized for your agency. So it will have your project description, your vehicle descriptions if you're getting vehicles. It will have goals and milestones from your application, your implementation plan, sometimes summarize, sometimes I compress it a bit, clean it up a little bit. It will have your staffing plan and something about your project sustainability. If you have a sustainability plan, we could talk about it in there just to show. If you, what else? What am I trying to say? If you have a diversification of funds, things like that, we could put that in there. Then it has a little blurb about what is required from you to us. So you're agreeing that after your project is awarded, you will attend the mandatory trainings. You will report your vehicles in Ride Pilot. You will put everything up in Ride Pilot. You will follow the federal asset guidelines. You're agreeing that you will turn in your quarterly reports, your annual report, your single audit, your financial report. You'll sign the certs and assurances every year. That's like something that the federal government puts out every year, and we just send it to you in DocuSign and you can sign it. That's required for any agencies that receive federal funding. Project closeout. Closeout paperwork is usually a Google form that we send you. So yeah, it goes through that. And then we add our milestones from the federal application that I told you about. And then, yeah, it kind of summarizes some of the hard to read stuff that's at the top. Then it will show your budget. This budget will then, so this budget from your agreement, we will then update in your Zoom grants and change your application budget to match it so that you don't get confused when you're submitting invoices. So if you need to remember what you applied for, be sure to save a copy of your application because we will go in and change the budget so that it matches the budget from your agreement because it helps avoid confusion because we've had a lot of confusion with that because there's like your budget and then there will be a column for what you were actually awarded and people will get confused and look at the budget and not what they were awarded. So now we just update the whole thing so that it matches your grant agreement. Then you will have lobbying and debarment stuff if that's required. If you lobby, you have to fill that out, sign that, and that's it. So if you want to look through that, read that, that is available to you on the website. And then the federal, where's my PowerPoint? Oh no, start all over. The federal clauses change. So if there are different ones this year, then I will update that before I send you the grant agreement because they always like to change them. So that copy on our website might already be out of date. If it has anything about DBE or environmental requirements, that might be out of date. Okay. We are back to here. How do I make this? Hold on. That there. Put the chat here so I can see. Got it. Okay. Also, so last time there was a scaling question in the budget narrative in Zoom grants. I have added that actually. I moved it to the application questions. So at the very bottom, the very last question is a question about scalability that you have to answer because when I put it in the budget narrative, people were still skipping it. So now it's an application question. It's not scored or anything, but you have to answer it. This will help the GMAT. This will just inform us on what is most important to you from your application. If the GMAT decides they have to cut any projects that were at the bottom of the program of projects list, do not say nothing can be scaled or we will close our doors. That's not a good strategy for funders and can definitely backfire because to us that shows we're a high risk, and if we don't get this money, we can't serve our clients. You want to show that you're sustainable without federal funding. So don't put that. Be as realistic as possible so that we can help you the best we can. So if you say, you know, right now the accessible expansion van is the most important thing to us. So if you're going to give us anything that we ask for, please give us that first. The second most important thing to us, this is just an example, is operating assistance, you know, and then be realistic about what you could function with. Be as specific as possible. Like, we really want to hire a driver this year for that van. So we need more than 30%. Like, if we go below the 30% of what we asked, you know, maybe we wouldn't be able to hire that driver. So the expansion of our program and the goals we're trying to achieve might be affected. And then you could say our least important thing that we applied for is the non-accessible sedan. So if you're going to cut something, take that, please, first. This is just an opportunity for you to give us that information in case we have to cut projects. Then I can pull that question and tell the GMAT, well, hey, wait a minute. This person said that before we cut their accessible van, we should cut the sedan if we're trying to find areas where we need to reduce funding. So please answer that question the best you can so that we have help making those decisions. That doesn't mean that it won't be cut. Maybe we have to. But it also is something we can return to if we have remaining funds. I hope that helps explain that. Okay. And then next we're going to talk about post-award a little bit. But remember, we have a full post-award training once you're awarded that you have to attend, where we go way into detail on everything that's required after you accept the grant agreement, all of your reporting and all of that. Okay. The full application on the previous, sorry, I have a question. In the previous 5310 cycle, what was the maximum number of vehicles or funding awarded to one applicant? We don't have a maximum number like that we can't go over. It totally depends on the UZA, on what the grant management advisory team and the local coordinated council in that UZA finds as priority. I would have to look. We did have our program of projects up on the website, but we just updated the website for the notice of funding, so I don't think it's there anymore. But once the program of project for this award cycle is done, we do put that on our website so that it's public, so anyone can view how many vehicles we awarded, the amount of money we awarded, but it just totally depends. Probably right now, the agency that gets the most money is Turn Community Services because they apply in all three of the urbanized areas and they have a very large fleet. But yeah, we don't have a cap per se. Typically, when a new agency applies, though, we do have requirements on what or limits on what they can apply for because you haven't done any activities within, how do I explain this? You can apply for a vehicle your first time applying, but we won't award operating the first time. So usually we start with like one vehicle with a new agency and see how they do managing a federal asset. And then the next time you apply, you can expand your fleet, ask for operating because you'll already have costs associated with the management of that vehicle that you can apply for reimbursement for. So that's typically how we do it. Yeah. But if you need, you could email me if you have specific questions and I could tell you because that is public information, what we awarded in the past. The application will close March 1st at midnight. and no late applications will be accepted. So please don't wait until that date. And yes, this year I did adjust the dates because everyone freaked out last time when I made it due on a Friday night. So it's due Sunday night. So if you need the weekend to finish, I left it open, but please don't wait till the last weekend because again, if I can get through your application with a fine-tooth comb and catch mistakes before, we run out of time, then you can fix those mistakes. I can help you more. I can tell if you need more help on your application. Okay. Corrections, your application might be reopened for corrections, but you have to make sure you resubmit it before March 31st. If I see that you haven't resubmitted it, I might panic and call you. Please resubmit by March 31st so that there are no open applications that were opened for corrections and then not resubmitted. Remember that your application contact has to submit. Okay, 1 second. Okay, application scoring. Remember I told you after your pre-application is approved, I will send you the application guide that will walk you through the application questions. I will also include the scoring rubric that has more information than this. This is just a summary to kind of give you an idea. The coordinated human service transportation plan requirements questions are worth 30 points. Commitment to collaboration, that is you attended all the local coordinated council, you collaborate with other agencies, that type of thing. 10 points are possible for those questions. And then the project work plan is things like your staffing plan, your financial capacity and sustainability, your technical plan, your implementation plan, and all of that. That section is worth 40 points. So that is the most important section of your application. And then your risk assessment also affects the scoring of your application. If you are a low risk, you get 20 points. If you're medium, I think you get 10, and high gets no extra points for that section, I believe. We'll double check when the rubric comes out, but I think that's how we did it last time. And then the full application score is 100 points possible. Did I talk about, oh, I think it's upcoming. Let me make sure. Oh yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. Evaluation process. The coordinated mobility staff, so me, Christy, Trista, Jerry, we all sit down and we go through the applications and we score them, and then we compare our scores and find an average of those scores. We then give those scores and the applications to the GMAT if your UZA has a GMAT. So Salt Lake and Ogden-Layton both have a GMAT. The Provo Orem, we will just show them the scores of the April LCC. We'll show them the program of projects. That is the most transparent local coordinated council. And they like to discuss everything as a group. But in the Salt Lake and the Ogden-Layton UZAs, we're not going to show your scores in your applications. We just give that to the GMAT and then they make final decisions. And then you'll have a chance to answer their questions and present to them. In the Provo Orem area, we do it a little different. You can present if you want to your group, you can answer questions to the group, but they do it a lot more like involved, a lot more like a group discussion. So it's just a little bit different. Yeah. So at the April LCC, you're welcome to do a PowerPoint if you want. When we're getting closer to it and I can see how many people are presenting, I'll let you know how much time you will have. And in Salt Lake, usually you have the least amount of time because we have so many applicants usually in the Salt Lake UZA, and we have to get through them pretty quickly. So just be aware of that. Provo Provo Orem, much more relaxed and you have more time. And then the GMAT stays after the LCC meeting and makes final decisions on their own. And in Provo Orem, everyone stays and makes final decisions together. After GMAT has made their final decisions, I finalize the program of projects and send out award letters. You will get an award letter in the mail and in your email to whoever the applicant was, or sorry, the application contact for your agency. And then we began the application process to FTA, which I talked about. June LCC, we show you the program of projects. That's kind of what it looks like in that lovely AI image. We send out award letters and all that. Grant agreement. We already showed you the grant agreement. So that's what it looks like. You sign it, and then once you sign it, your project has started, and you can submit your invoices. Also, we usually do a lunch and learn about your grant agreement. I can't remember. I try to do lunch and learns through the year on topics that people are struggling with. If we already have a recorded lunch and learn on that topic, we probably won't do it again, but you can go watch it on YouTube. We send out the notices of the lunch and learns through the LCC emailing list. So make sure you are signed up to receive those emails from Trista Lawrence. And then if anyone changes from your the sheet on your application where you put who has to sign in their emails, if any of that changes before your grant agreement comes out, please update that. Also, we continue to use that through your application cycle for your certificate and assurances that the federal government sends out every year. So update that if your staff changes so that we know who to send that to. Post-award summary. What was the other thing? The human, I'm going to go back before we do post-award. Let's go back to the application for a second. I want to make sure I cover properly the human service transportation plans. Okay. Those are the maps. Oh, where am I going? Also, here is our program management plan that I mentioned earlier that says and explains how UTA manages the program. UDOT also has one that's different than ours and says how they manage their program. Okay, go back. So we'll just find it here. On the local coordinated council page, we have all the dates of the upcoming LCC meetings for the year and the addresses of where they will be held. Trista's email is there. Here are the plans. Okay, so I'm going to also try to combine it in an easy to read document that I can send out with the application guide because these plans are very big, but I just wanted to show you where to find them. And then at the very back, so this one is Salt Lake, it's 70 pages long. So if you scroll to, where does it start? Page 46 here, but it's page 50 on the Adobe. But that's where it starts, and each of the plans is a little different. I'll try to combine those pages into something that's easier for you to find so that you don't have to, struggle to find it. But there are questions on the application that reference directly to these sections. So you need to explain in your application how your project is going to address the needs and the gaps that the local coordinated council in your area identified. And then also how it will, what strategies it will meet. So these are the strategies. And then the projects, it has to fit into one of these projects. Okay. And there are questions on your application that are required by the FTA for us to have in the application And you have to refer to these plans to make sure that your project is in the plan, okay? And just because a project is in the plan doesn't mean it's funded by 5310. Let me make that clear. But your 5310 project has to meet one of these on the list, okay? I hope that makes sense. Okay, now we can talk about post-award. Post-award training will be held in the summer or fall. This training will provide detailed guidance on reporting requirements, your quarterly reports, your invoice submission for reimbursement and vehicle, and then your Ride Pilot reporting. Ride Pilot, again, is our vehicle tracking system. I could just show it to you really quick so you kind of have an idea of what that looks like. And we are currently updating it. It's taking longer than we hoped because the code is really old. So this is what Ride Pilot looks like. There's different agencies, but you would just see your agency. You can put in trips, you can put in all sorts of stuff. And then your vehicles. You can see your vehicle details, your scheduled maintenance plan. You can add your warranties. You put in the date your vehicle was placed in service. So Ride Pilot is what we use to track so that you don't have to have a written vehicle management system that the FTA requires. It also makes it a lot easier when we get audited to show FTA how we're tracking your vehicles. So we require that you use that system until the vehicle has met its federal useful life. You're also welcome to use it for your full fleet. Once Clint trains you on how to do it, you can add as many vehicles as you want. Turn Community Services that I mentioned, they use it for their full fleet. They've got tons of vehicles in there. So it's free to all agencies that want to use it. I have a question. Does Ride Pilot take electronic uploads from maintenance management system software or other sources? I'm not sure. You would have to talk to our IT guy about that, but it's a pretty basic thing. Yeah, like John said, it takes PDF. I highly doubt that it could like combine with another management system. But if you already have some type of system that tracks all of that, if you can give us access to it, that's something we could talk about. If you wanted to use that instead for management of your vehicle, but currently we require Ride Pilot to be used. I know that, for example, at UTA, we have a system like that, but then we have our Vanpool program. They have to use that system, and then they also have to use Ride Pilot. So they just take the information from their other program and input it into Ride Pilot. They told me it doesn't take them long, so that's what they do. Yeah, but that's something we could always talk about. We would have to see your system, make sure we have access to it, and that kind of stuff. The reason we require Ride Pilot is because we have access to it. It's very easy for us to access the information in an audit. We can make sure that you can't delete the information so that we are meeting the threshold of documentation. We have to keep documents 3 years after disposal of a vehicle or something to show in an audit. So there's just certain audit requirements that we have to have or meet that Ride Pilot helps us with a lot. Ride Pilot used to also have a dispatching software feature, but it was costing us a lot of money and people weren't using it, so it doesn't do that anymore. Now we just use it for vehicle tracking. But yeah, you could talk more with our IT project manager, Clint, about that kind of stuff. Reporting. Everyone has quarterly reports after you get your award, and you have to do quarterly reports for 2 years or until your project is complete. The reason I say until your project is complete is like if you had a vehicle award, but it took 2.5 years for us to get it. You still have to have it open until you get your vehicle. And then we can close out your project. Hopefully that never happens. But another example is if you just have operating and you're not even getting a vehicle. So if I just have operating, as soon as I sign my grant agreement, I turn in all my invoices and I get them paid within 30 days, then I'm done with my project. So then you just need to reach out to us and say, my project's completed. I already got all of my invoices, and I'm done. Then we can go into Zoom grants. We have to do it manually. We can go in and turn those off for you. What else? But then you still have to complete a closeout report. So we usually wait until we're close to closing out that grant, and then we send out a Google form. Everyone has to complete it, and it's a closeout report. We can't do that within the Zoom grant system. So right now it's just a Google form. And you have to fill that out for your project to be totally complete and closed. Those who are awarded vehicles must report trips, people served in Ride Pilot, upload scheduled maintenance, and track damage. Also, you can also track, what's it called? Oh my gosh. Trips that are not serving people. I can't think of the word right now. Beyond that, vehicles must stay with your agency until disposal. You have to notify UTA of disposal and work with us on returning any funds to the FTA if necessary. That will be spelled out in your grant agreement. I do think that the threshold has changed from 5,000 to 10,000 that you can keep once the vehicle is disposed of, because vehicles are worth more in today's economy. So that will be in your grant agreement. And then here's a lovely picture of our team. Yes, incidental trips. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you, John. Incidental trips are trips where you're not taking a client. You still have to report those in Ride Pilot. And then your quarterly report, you'll explain what those incidental trips were for. All of our contact information is also on our website. If you have any program related questions, you can reach out to me. I am the 5310 grant administrator. And Jerry Becker is our grants compliance officer. She is there to help you with compliance questions, invoice questions, setting up a time to pick up your vehicle, that kind of thing. Trista Lawrence is our coordination manager. She handles the local coordinated council meetings. And she also is the project manager for our temporary trip referral line. And Clint is our project manager who sees the e-voucher and Ride Pilot Lite. Oh my gosh, I forgot to talk about e-voucher. Let's pause. We have an upcoming Lunch and Learn January 13th, which I don't know if it was sent out yet. We'll send out the email with the link. It's going to be Clint giving the talk, and it's all about e-voucher, what that is, and you can apply for e-voucher funds in this application cycle. So if that's something that interests you, please attend that Lunch and Learn. It will be the 13th at noon, I believe, but it was sent out. Thank you, Andy. E-voucher is the voucher program we used to do that was all paper. That's gone. We're done doing that. We have a super cool new thing. We're the first people in the country that we know of doing something like this. And we have teamed up with this really cool program people called Kinetech. And they were so excited about our e-voucher idea. We've been trying to get it off the ground for like 7 years, and we were just really struggling. And then when we found them, they were like really excited. So this is their passion project. They've donated a lot of time to it, and Clint will tell you all about that at the Lunch and Learn. But what it is a system where you can, how do I explain? Let's say one of your clients needs a trip to the doctor, and you can't provide that service, but they have a neighbor who could give them a ride. They can log into the e-voucher system as a driver, give that person a ride, and then be reimbursed directly through the app for that trip. Agencies can enroll in the e-voucher system and oversee it. They can add different funding sources for different types of clientele. So if you have 5310 funds, you can use that for, the 5310 stuff. And then if you have, let's say you have money from DHS or I don't know, something else, and maybe it has different eligibility requirements, you can set those up. You can put the funds in there, pay from different pots. You can decide your rate. Clint will talk about that a little bit. We typically recommend the standard IRS rate, which is 70 cents a mile, and then $10 if it's like under a certain, I can't remember, but you can decide the rate. So if you have different funding sources and you want to do different rates, you can do that. And then we reimburse e-voucher at, oh no, I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's an operating, so I think it's 50/50. So that's a project you could apply for. Thank you, Trista. It's $10 if it's under 14 miles. That's just the standard rate that we recommend. That's like the IRS standard rate. But like I said, your agency can decide and set the limits that you want. And it's really cool. So Clint will be showing that on the 13th, if that's something you want to look into and apply for. What else? Christy Allen is our coordinated mobility manager. So if you have questions for her, she works with our vehicle procurement currently, and she just is the general manager overseeing our whole coordinated mobility program. And I'm going to open it for questions. If you want to hit the raise hand. Oh, Sandra, hold on. How do I unmute? Okay, Sandra, you have to unmute. I unmuted you, but it's still muted. So I think you have to unmute yourself. And then you can ask your question. Maybe? I tried to unmute you, Sandra. I don't know why. Ah. Okay. Well, I'll answer Maggie's question while Sandra tries to unmute herself. Do quarterly reports use the calendar year or FTA? FTA. Remember, calendar year doesn't exist. If I could print you all calendars for FTA's fiscal year, I would, but I've looked for them and I can't find any. But it is based on the FTA's federal fiscal year. So that little year that we showed you, you could even print that page from the slides that I gave you and hang it in your office if you wanted. It shows the quarters, it shows the federal fiscal year. And Sandra's still not unmuted. I don't know how to fix that. I allowed your mic. Okay, Andy has a question. Okay, you can unmute yourself, Andy.
Okay, cool. It worked for me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so if we were going to do the vouchers and like coordinated mobility, but we wanted to also coordinate like trips to like Salt Lake, back and forth between Weber and Salt Lake, and they lived in Salt Lake, do you have to apply for both funding sources?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you would. Well, no, as long as it depends on the origin of the trip or the destination, as long as one of them is within the UZA you're applying for. So as long as they're starting or ending in somewhere in the Ogden-Layton, then you only have to apply there. If they will be starting and ending in the Salt Lake region, then I think you have to apply for funds in that area as well. That's something we could talk more with Clint about. But yes, because you would have to separate the funding within the program. And I know you can do that. It will separate those. And maybe there's a way you could set it up with him. I don't know the details, but maybe he could even have it. So if you have, it can identify where the client's going and coming from, and then use that funding source to pay for that trip. I don't know. We'll have to
So
ask him,
maybe,
but
okay, he probably
yeah,
could answer that at the lunch and learn.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's new. We might have some hiccups learning the best way to do it, but I'm excited to start using it and see what we can do with the program. So, any other questions about pre-application, application, post award?
Sorry, Sandra just texted me and she said that she can't unmute her mic on her end.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe
Oh
she can
well.
just email you the question
Yeah. If anyone has questions, more detailed
or call
questions
you.
that you need like a longer answer for or something like that, feel free to email me. If you have problems with the Zoom Grants portal, you can contact Zoom Grants customer service directly. Or if it's a question about the application questions or documents or tables that I can help with, you can ask me. But if it's like a program issue, you will have to contact them. Fallon, you can unmute. You can unmute yourself if you have a question. Why is it not? I enabled your mic, so you just have to go to your mic at the top and unmute yourself. Or you can put your question in the chat. It should work. I don't know why it's not working. Trista also put the quarters dates in the chat. Again, this is our website under the thank you and the YouTube and then my contact information. If you subscribe to the YouTube, it will alert you when we post videos, and make sure that you are on the local coordinated council email list to receive updates. And Trista, when is our next meeting? And do you want to talk about the temporary trips program at all? Sorry, I allowed your mic if you want to talk.
Thank you. The next LCC meeting for Salt Lake is Wednesday, February 25th. February's meetings will be virtual. They are the only virtual meetings this year. So Weber Davis will be Thursday the 26th at 10. Salt Lake's is at 9. And then Thursday the 26th for Provo Orem is at 2. And I'll send those invites out as it gets a little closer. And then as far as temporary trips, yes, for those of you who are familiar with that project, we are getting a lot of calls for that. I'm spending a good chunk of my day every day managing that and getting people approved for trips. Please remember, if you are referring people for the project, that it is temporary trips. It's not meant to be a permanent solution. I get a lot of people calling who are under the impression that this is their solution to being able to get to work every day for the rest of their lives or to all of their medical appointments. So just a reminder that if you're talking to people about it, that it is just a temporary solution to fill, a 30, maybe 60-day gap while they're trying to figure out a longer term solution, or to get qualified through like Rides to Wellness with Salt Lake County, or through your local aging organization, or through, like their Medicare, Medicaid, if it covers medical transportation. We are aware that there are still a lot of issues, especially when it comes to medical. That is the majority of the calls that I get. I'm doing my best to cover as many people as possible, but like I said, I can't give all the money to one person so that they can get everywhere for the rest of their life. And if you have questions about that project or program, feel free to call me or email me, and we can work through some of those issues. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Trista. Okay, and do Christy or Jerry have anything they need to share before we end this training? Since you're on the line. I don't think so. This is the UTA referral line that we were talking about, the temporary trips line, up on the screen. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Looks like we're finishing early, so that's great. Go have lunch. And then once this recorded training is done, I will put it on the website. And then remember, if you have any questions, just send me an email. And remember, your pre-application is due January 18th. Okay, thank you, everyone.